Thank you for coming to our 12th annual Cleveland Kurentovanje cooking demonstration. One of our annual favorites of our cultural programming. We're here with Marc Tomc for our cooking demonstration this year. This year we will be making
Kremšnite.
And this is a more approachable version, right, Marc?
Much more approachable, simplified, and more successful than the true Kremšnite that you do make.
Now, if you are interested in making the bona fide from absolute scratch Kremšnite, check out one of our past year's recordings, which we will link for you in the comments here, and you can check out how to do this. But if you are someone like me who loves a good Kremšnite, but also has not great skills in cooking and baking, then this is where you want to be. So Marc, tell us a little bit about how long do we think this is going to take to make, and anything else that you would want to say about the recipe before we jump in.
This will probably take you at least maybe max half hour to make, and put it all together maybe even 20 minutes. And then chill time probably about a half hour to an hour. So preparing this before a family event, if you're going to a friend's house, whatever the case may be, you don't have to make this the night before. The way it is actually done, when you see, you don't want to keep this item in the fridge too long because it will become a little bit too moist. But I will explain more in the video.
All right, let's get into it.
Sounds good, I'm ready.
And if you have questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments of our Facebook and YouTube, and we will answer them as they come in. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So we're here now ready to make our simplified version that's pretty much 99% successful to make Kremšnite. It's a little bit different than the original traditional version, but it still looks nice and does taste very good. And I think that's the most important. Here we have the products that I'm going to use when I'm making it today. Vitamin D whole milk, heavy whipping cream, your tea biscuits, vanilla jello pudding, and this is the one that's instant quick. You only have to mix with cold milk. You don't have to do it over a flame on the stove. And then of course, whip it. Whip it is something I put in the heavy whipping cream when it's mixing for a stabilizer to keep it a little bit more on the stiff solid side, because when this is a dessert that's staying out too long, it will definitely start to slowly not melt but falling apart and won't look as nice. All depends also on the time of year and how warm your house is in the winter, and then in the summer it's something you have to eat quick. But this is a nice refreshing dessert, especially if you have a full meal for a holiday and then it's dessert time. It still craves the sweet tooth, but it's not too filling. So I'm going to start preparing this, and I have two bowls here because when you do make the jello pudding, and it's vanilla flavored, each package does require 2 cups of milk. So to make sure it mixes well, I'm going to do it in 2 bowls. So you can plan to have 4 cups of milk that you will need to make this. Before I go any further, 2 packages of the vanilla pudding, 4 cups of milk to make it, will actually be enough to fill a pan this size. And then once I come to the cream, you will do 3 cups of the heavy whipping cream mixed to fill the pan also. I'm going to start putting the cookies and just lay them down in the pan for you. Definitely buy at least 1 package of the cookies. This is a 9 by 13 pan, so it's pretty much a universal size, and I'm able to fit 15 of the tea biscuit cookies down, and I'm actually putting them, because it's the bottom the top side face down. And you did see, I did line my pan with parchment paper, because once you do lay and spread the vanilla pudding down and you put it in the fridge with the wetness from the pudding, it's gonna actually very soften up the cookie. And I'm actually putting this on the side to help with the cream and the pudding, and hopefully they're gonna work with me. Sometimes you have a little bit of a struggle. This is more just to keep everything in place, and it'll be easier to take it out. It's really not that hard. Once you get the pudding in here, it's gonna definitely work out. So I'm gonna just move this to the side as I prepare the puddings. And also, before I continue, if you want to, you can purchase a cake mold, as they call it, that you can make whatever size you want. So if you don't want to make a lot of the Kremšnite, you wanted to do less pieces, or you can extend it and make it bigger. Now I haven't used this, as I just purchased this, so you just have to kind of place your cookies down and how it's going to measure. If there is a gap, you just gently close it up. So it's nice and snug. Don't go too hard, because then your cookies will fly out. And then you can fill it with the cream, the vanilla pudding, and the white heavy whipping cream. And it's also nice to easily pull it apart and slide it off. Either way, your two options, and always I use the bottom with parchment paper. So I'm going to use the vitamin D milk. I prefer to use this one. It's a little bit heavier for the pudding. And whenever I start to mix, I always make sure that I'm already mixing and pouring it in, because you don't want to have little clumps of the pudding start floating around that will not want to dissolve. And I'm sure a lot of you have made varieties of puddings already, maybe for different desserts. You mix this really well for 2 minutes. It's going to eventually thicken up. And then I set it to the side for about 5 or 7 minutes, so it definitely thickens on its own. And this is the nice thing about this dessert, because having to do this over a hot stove with eggs and milk and flour and sugar, and making sure it doesn't burn and the eggs don't turn into scrambled eggs, and you're constantly mixing, and then letting it cool, and then pouring it into your pan or into the cake mold, putting it in the refrigerator, and then taking it out, hoping and praying that it won't fall apart, which has happened quite often, as I've witnessed on some of the baking groups that I belong in the US and also in Slovenia. I also choose to mix both vanilla puddings in 2 different bowls, just so everything does mix nice. And sometimes putting it all together and mixing 4 cups of milk with the 2 packages of pudding can be a little bit too much. If you do like very, very sweet desserts, you do have an option. You can also take some powdered sugar, make sure you sift it, and you can also put that in your vanilla pudding and mix it if you prefer for it to be very, very sweet. So we have just finished mixing the puddings and letting them sit for about 5 to 7 minutes. As you can see, they have already stabilized and gotten nice and thick because they're not moving, so that's perfect. In the meantime, I'm going to get ready to do the heavy whipping cream, but also want to let you know, if you want to, with the products that I did use, there's also the European products you can buy at a lot of the import stores, or maybe even online. You can get this one by Dolcella for the Kremšnite. It's also a very good tasting vanilla pudding that you can use to fill instead of the regular Jello instant pudding, vanilla flavored. This is the one type of, it's a German style tea biscuit. And also this is another popular one that's from Slovenia, Croatia. Of the butter tea biscuit you can also use, so either one does work, just different companies do make it. And if you want to, you can also get the vanilla pudding by Dr. Oetker. Is also very good quality too, if you don't want to use the Jello vanilla pudding. There's different varieties. So now I'm going to proceed and make the heavy whipping cream, which I'm going to use, shake it up a little bit, 3 cups of heavy whipping cream. So that was 2. We have 3 cups. I always like to make more, so I do have enough. And also make sure if you buy the tea biscuits, usually they come in a 2-pack. If you do buy the 1-pack, get at least 2. Because for an example, you don't want to run short because the tea biscuits can crack, and you don't want to be putting them together because we have to do lamb on the top once we are ready to finish the product. So I have this here ready. I'm going to use a mixer and also the Whip It. This is the stabilizer for the cream. And I'm going to start mixing and adding it in so it does blend nicely. You don't want to start too high so it doesn't start splattering everywhere. And we don't want it to go too thick because we want to make sure it's going to be able to spread nicely on top of the vanilla pudding once we put it in the cake pan. So now I'm going to just take the vanilla puddings with the spatula and just get the sides off. And I'm going to go, and this is enough to do half of the pan. Make sure we get everything out as possible. We don't want to waste any of it. Then we're going to get the other bowl and do the same thing. over. And if I forgot to mention, a 9 by 13 cake pan, I was able to lay down 15 of the tea biscuits. So I'll give you 15 slices of the simplified version of a Kremšnite. So Kremšnite is actually, the schnitzel is actually the phyllo dough part that is laid on the bottom and then also put on the top of the original Kremšnite, in which I know sometimes it can be very hard to make sure the phyllo dough, when you put it in the oven for a short time, that it does not bubble up. And then also trying to cut it as it does harden can also be hard, and it can be messy. And the nice thing with this one is it's kind of, you can consider as almost pre-sliced in a way. And with the pudding, the bottom tea biscuits will soften up. That's why if you leave it in the fridge too long, it'll become too moist and it will be messy when you take it out of the cake pan. It might be a little bit more cleaner when you do it if you use a cake mold. That's why I have these cookies on the side to make it easier to take out. You want to make sure you spread this evenly as much as possible. The pudding will slowly even out as it's together here. Then we're going to take the heavy whipping cream that we have mixed. And we're just gonna plop it down and just slowly put it. You don't want to put too much pressure. You don't want to play with it too much because you don't want to start mixing the vanilla pudding into the whites, because then you're going to have a marble Kremšnite, which would be okay because the main goal is that it tastes good. And even if you do mix the heavy whipping cream a little bit more, it's okay. This way it's just a little bit easier to spread and to work with, because you're putting pretty much two creams together and it could get kind of messy. But you just want to gently spread it out as evenly as possible. And you definitely don't want to push down too hard so it doesn't start mixing or too much with the vanilla pudding. You want this to be kind of nice and layered so you can see the vanilla pudding and the white, the distinction. And try to even it out as much as possible I'm an amateur in doing this. Might not look as good, but main concern is that it does taste good. Making real Kremšnite, I actually have honestly never tried, just because I've seen how many times, you know, it has not happened. And I do like this because it's something nice, simple, easy you can make and you can enjoy, especially if you can't get to Slovenia or get to your local baker. If anyone, wherever you're located, does make them, you make it yourself. And the last thing we need to actually put on is the rest of the tea biscuits on the top. And I'm just gonna lay them down. I'm not gonna push too much. And basically we're gonna do 5 across. And it's gonna come out to 3 rows of 5. And the tea biscuit is nice, buttery, not too sweet. Combined, it does give it a great flavor. And this is your simplified version of a Kremšnite. So I'm using a sharp knife to cut the Kremšnite. The tea biscuit cookies that you were going to use will become very, very, very soft with the different types of creams. And you have the one slice. This is just so it doesn't stick to the sides, it's easier to pull out. And we're going to go with the next one. And you kind of have to do it slowly because the different creams of the pudding and the heavy whipping cream up top will stick together. One note is if you do leave it in the fridge too long, your cookies will get too moist and then it will stick and will not come out as nice pieces. So the one bonus with this dessert of Kremšnite in a simplified way, this is actually something you can make day of because the puddings that I used will set very quickly in about 5-7 minutes. And then you have the heavy whipping cream that's whipped up and also with a stabilizer put inside. And then you can keep it in the fridge about a half hour, max an hour, and you'll be all set to go. Mine was actually in a little bit longer. But either way, if you had regular Kremšnite in Slovenia, anywhere else, they are very hard to pull out of a box or a container. It's a very delicate dessert, but the main goal is